Do you guys catch that detail? It was my first time that Michael Shannon refers to Tom Cruise's character as, quote, face. Like he says, "Hey, face!" Which,
Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs in Vanilla Sky that someone did an interview with him. I was reading it, and he like had Cameron Crowe, of course, and he's like,
of
"Oh yeah,
course.
there's all these little like things that people still haven't picked up." And this is like an interview like a year ago, and I'm like, "Nobody cares, buddy. Like, nobody cares." There's
Did
like
you know that we modeled that shot off the Bob Dylan cover?
there, yeah, exactly. But there's one where it's like he has Brian Wilson screaming in the studio with the Beach Boys during a Nirvana unreleased track.
Oh,
It's one of his Easter eggs. I was like, that's not an Easter egg. That's like a psychopath. Like, hey folks, it's Film Trace. It's a podcast where we trace the life of a film from conception to production, all the way to release and reception. It is our camp season of camp. We are in the 2000s. We've done 2020 with Pearl and Madame Web.
It's just called Madam Web.
Whatever.
I'm going to correct you every episode.
2010, we did The Love Witch and Black Swan. And now we are doing Sugar and Spice and Vanilla Sky for the 2000s. Special guest, friend of the show, patron of the show, I'll call you.
It sounded like you almost called her a hatron.
Oh, patron of the show. Molly, say hello. How you doing? Welcome back.
How am I a patron? Am I like just emotionally? It's for emotional support.
You emotionally support me in the podcast. So
Decades of emotional support. That is my patronage for this podcast, I guess. Probably. Hello. I'm back to be annoying.
This is what I think your fourth appearance, I want to say.
That sounds all right.
Like that. That sounds all right. Yeah.
Sure.
So you selected, I selected Vanilla Sky.
Yeah.
And I think Sugar and Spice, was that you, Chris, or is that you, Molly?
I went for Sugar and Spice.
Gotcha. All right.
Women aren't allowed to choose. Sorry.
Yeah.
I haven't recovered from that. I picked Sugar and Spice to start it off. I am sure the bulk of this conversation will drift heavily toward Vanilla Sky for reasons both tragic and obvious, but we were kind of trying to lay it out a little different this season.
Yeah.
Madame Web is your kind of classic trashy camp, what Susan Sontag referred to in her original notes on camp as naive camp versus deliberate camp, which is more what Ty West was doing in Pearl and what Anna Biller is doing in The Love Witch. And then we talked about the naive aspects of Black Swan, kind of going for like the biggest, most ridiculous thing possible in a very self-serious way. Kind of a different twist on it than, a hacky minor entry in the Marvel Sony universe like Madame Web. But here we very much have in a similar vein and quote auteur attempting to go for broke, and it kind of being an unfortunate turning point in his career. That's Cameron Crowe with Vanilla Sky. But first, let's talk about the maybe deliberate camp. I think this is a very interesting and unique example compared to a lot of the other films we're going to be covering this season. Sugar and Spice, originally titled Sugar and Spice and Semi-Automatics, was a script that had been floating around LA for a while from Iona Williams, who's from Minnesota, that's where I'm at. But she got a foothold in the industry with her script for Drop Dead Gorgeous, which is definitely a top fave of the comedy genre, especially with 90s movies. And this one kind of fell off. She ended up changing her name, using a pseudonym, essentially because it came out in the wake of Columbine and the studio chopped it to death before it was finally released in the late fall of 2001. And yet it still has kind of survived and thrived as a kind of cult following over the years. And there's still, I think, enough like campiness with intent that I still think it's not a great film, I don't think, but it's definitely a fascinating kind of curio of the time period, and it becomes more and more interesting every time you watch it.
I would agree. I would agree.
I'd
never seen it before.
Yeah.
Today for the first time free on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's free on YouTube, so check it out.
Nice.
Yeah, I had never seen it before. Had never even heard of it.
Oh, really?
But very pleasantly surprised. I very much enjoyed this movie.
It seemed up your alley. There's another reason.
Yeah, it was just like very dark and cutting, and clearly something went wrong in post. Where like the last 20 minutes or something like just didn't like there's got to be some sort of director's cut out there where it's like 2 hours long and it actually makes sense.
Yeah, this one's 80 minutes, 81.
Yeah, it seems a little short. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised having no idea what it was. I think it does sort of like fade at the end, but the opening like half hour is like gold. Mm-hmm. Molly, what do you think? Have you seen this one before?
Yeah, I think this is an example of, ladies have seen this one before, even though we're not allowed to pick. So no, I saw this when it like came out back like, in the 2001 probably. I've seen it multiple times before. Yeah, it's very much like I mean, all the people that are in it as well are like very like of that time for me, of like people that like didn't do a lot of stuff like after the time, especially like the women like Mina Suvari and Marley Shelton and Marla Sokoloff. But like they were like in a lot of stuff like when I was in high school and college, and then like they sort of so it's very much like I don't know, just like a little, and even what's her name, the actress who plays Fern, who also was in a couple other things, including she's the former beauty queen in Drop Dead Gorgeous as well. So there's like this, which is also from that time period. So like this movie has a lot of nostalgia for me too, of just like being like this very specific snapshot also of like actors from like that were like in things sort of in my high school and college years as well. But I've seen it multiple times. It's very fun. I mean, it's like a really great use of James Marsden too. Yeah. Like everybody's like, oh, it's him, and I'm like, this is his original himbo execution that he built all his other subsequent himbo abilities off of.
The foundation of his career.
The foundation of his execution of his charms.
Yeah. I don't know. I was surprised by how, I don't know, maybe this is like me being, I guess, in my 40s now. It felt like more biting than movies were back then. Am I right in saying that like the sarcasm here and the humor was like a little bit more like cynical or intelligent than you'd get in a normal like teen movie? Or am I like misreading that? Was it like that back then? I can't remember.
I mean, I think it kind of suffered having been released just months after Bring It On, the much more successful teen cheerleading film of that era. And while there's definitely, I don't know, something to be said about this whole time period with like, essentially you got, I kind of see it as a bookend from Clueless to Mean Girls, right? And there's all this stuff in between. And then there's also, of course, like Heathers as a precursor in the 80s. And this one does fit in this like weird little nook because it doesn't have like the same kind of interest in like the actual like life of high school as so much of the others.
Yeah.
It takes everything up a notch. Like it's somewhere in this kind of tenor of between Mean Girls and John Waters. And yet it's still like a studio film and clearly just like cut to death. But it still retains all the qualities that like Molly mentioned, from the cast to the just like kind of, you see not only like the genesis of James Marsden, but also kind of like that kind of, I don't know, it feels like there was a turn around the new millennium where you could manage to be a like uh counterculture film but still retain like this kind of like mainstream aesthetic. Like it was like, I think arguably most iconic shot of the movie is after they watch all the uh, macho crime films of the 90s like Heat and Reservoir Dogs, and then you get them in their cheerleading outfits with the Betty masks in slow motion to the Breeders, rather than black suited guys in Reservoir Dogs walking in slow motion to Little Green Bag. And that is, I mean, it's not a movie that like makes you like laugh all out loud like Drop Dead Gorgeous did or like Mean Girls does, but it's just like doing something with this whole like societal notion of uh, stereotypes and uh, um, gender roles that I don't think was really going on in much of any other mainstream releases around that time.
That's the thing that struck me immediately in the opening, like half hour, is that like they're clearly sort of shoving the stereotypes in our faces, but at the same time they're doing something with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the acting of the two leads is like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of The Love Witch, where it's almost like they're stuck in they're stuck in like the show Bewitched or something.
Right.
Like how they're acting like with each other, and then the outside world's like appalled that like at them. There's like a weird stilted acting style that's obviously intentional and obviously camp, which I think in and of itself is really outside the mainstream, right? Like that's doing that in a mainstream movie in the early 2000s. It is not normal. And I think like it immediately stuck out to me as something that was like interesting and different. It kind of reminded me, I'm trying to like think of other movies back, like Jaw. You guys remember Jawbreaker?
Sure. Yeah.
Like 1999. It's like kind of like the dark comedy and like you said, the Heathers influence. This kind of goes in a different direction though, right? It's like more playful. It's more fun. It's not as cynical or dark as those movies. What happens at the end? They all kind of get away with it, right? When in reality, this movie's based on a real story ish. All those girls got like 7 years in prison,
right?
Right. So it's sort of like, I don't know. It's a really fascinating mishmash of like tone and genre that I don't know. I really liked just because it's a lot of fun. It's a very fun movie. I mean, is it saying anything about gender roles? Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's trying to like do too much there. I mean, maybe just the visuals, like you're saying, there's something going on, but I don't know. I didn't really feel like there's a huge political undertow to it.
Is that true, Molly? Is it just a fun thing? Am I finding things that aren't actually there?
I mean, I don't know. Do you think they're there? I guess they're there for you, at least. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious, like, what makes you guys feel like this is camp versus, like, any of the other movies you named, like Drop Dead Gorgeous, Bring It On, Jawbreaker, any of the other, like, female-led teen movies around that time?
I think,
or you consider all of those camp.
I think they're probably all camp. Yeah,
they're all,
to some degree.
Are all female-led teen movies camp?
Well,
now you've dragged us into a corner, Molly.
That is a legitimate question.
Sure.
Given what you guys have been saying, I'm just curious.
I mean, Jawbreaker, yes. Drop Dead Gorgeous, yes.
I don't know about like that's why I think like going back to how I kind of frame this. Like, it seems like Clueless and Mean Girls are like bookends because they're like have these camp tendencies, but are like uh, almost like washed out enough to be palatable and not as like obviously fantastical, though they have those elements. Like,
Is
I think
Heather's camp?
I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say no. I don't know why I would say no, but it just feels like it's darker. There's some sort of deeper edge to it that's going on that's like not, I don't know, like the level of irony there is something else than like camp. Obviously camp is sort of somewhat indescribable, but like this movie reminded me a little bit. Have you guys seen Bottoms from last year?
No, not yet.
Okay, very much had that like over the top absurdist technicolor vibes going on to it, like this movie. That to me reads camp. I don't know why Heather's doesn't seem camp to me. Or like Lisa Frankenstein. Have you guys seen that one recently?
No.
Diablo Cody's script, also camp.
Oh, it's Diablo Cody's?
Yeah, that's what
I mean, are Juno and Jennifer's body camp?
I'd say Jennifer's body is, but Juno is not.
I don't know. Yeah, Juno.
Juno feels too grounded in reality.
Yeah, or like book smart, not camp.
No. And the other thing, because Heather's and Mean Girls have the connection, right? There was Heather's was written by Daniel Waters, the older brother of Mark Waters, who directed Mean Girls, and also like obviously you've got the Tina Fey screenplay for Mean Girls, which has the cynicality, but I think to make it camp, it has to have that element of uncynical joy that you also don't really get in Heather's.
Exactly. There's like
I do think, like you could totally. I don't know. I'm looking actually now the full script of the original version of Sugar and Spice and Semi-Automatics is pretty easy to find on Reddit, and it is such a different script and such a different third act that I don't know what exactly Williams was going for, but obviously having Columbine hit and then the studio tear it apart enough for her to take her name off of it, it makes it seem like, I don't know. I don't even know if maybe, because camp is also one of those things that's very much couched in the kind of zeitgeist that it's released in. And I don't know. I don't think anybody really would have been thinking about Sontag in reference to high school female-led movies, especially this one back in 2001. It seemed like the kind of umbrella has grown it over the years, and now in hindsight, we're able to kind of recontextualize a lot of these works. And I think that's one of the like thorny issues. We got into this a little bit, right, regarding Pearl, Dan, where it's like there's so much going on that's like surface level camp, but like what Ty West is going for there, unlike for instance Anna Biller in The Love Witch, is like a level of self-seriousness that like doesn't quite go to the high pitch of the kinds of fantastical superficiality, inside superficiality of a movie like The Love Witch. Like I think it's a spectrum, right? Like we are not really dealing with a binary, even though we're kind of setting it up like that by having two films, one deliberate, one naive, camp each other.
I don't know, but it's pretty much a binary when you think about it. In the sense that like we can talk about Vanilla Sky because it's the elephant in the room right now. It's, the distinction, Sontag has her distinction. Okay, that's fine. She started a discussion. That doesn't necessarily mean that she's defining it or defines it as it moves forward. We technically all define it together as we watch movies and figure out what camp really is. But I think the key to like one of the key to her viewpoints is this idea of extravagance and artifice, right? There's this pleasure in artifice in and of itself. And I think that like you can't do that without commenting on the artifice itself, which like Love Witch is the perfect example of this. Anna Biller so clearly loves Hammer movies and, pre-code movies and, the past. She so clearly is obsessed with those films. But in her desire to express herself and create something, she's using those as tools to sort of, and accents them in a way and kind of perverts them and skews them in a way that makes them kind of hers. Like Sugar and Spice, I think, is a way less dramatic example of that, but it's still the same idea. It's a teen movie. The whole concept is funny, perfect. The perfect teenager, leader of the cheer squad and like the captain football team, and like what would happen in a normal teen movie if they had gotten pregnant? Well, number one, they wouldn't, because you can't do that in a teen movie. Right. Yeah. Or that would be
there would be a pregnancy scare.
Pregnancy scare, or it would be a movie about oh, maybe she should get an abortion, but then she probably doesn't because that's not mainstream American entertainment. Right.
Like Juno, right?
Which is obviously like oddly conservative. But I think it's like ultimately like it's this understanding that being over the top and the artifice of film itself is a way to communicate, right, through that extravagance. Whereas something like the other movies we talked about, and Molly, you can jump in. You've probably seen Black Swan somewhat recently. I
would hope. Assumption.
I would hope. Or Vanilla Sky is essentially that like it's extravagance in the service of something else, right? It's like I have a vision that I want to put out there. It's absurd. And like it's ego versus kind of like joyful play of convention. I don't know. That's my read on it, but
yeah, give us your lowdown, Molly. Where do you see, especially these two movies in this under this umbrella?
I mean, I was trying to follow sort of what you guys were framing camp, but which seems to be a little muddy for both of you, which is fine. But I mean, like I'm not saying that it's a sort of a muddy concept, I guess. Yeah. I mean, that's why I asked that question before, because I feel like when you guys were trying to contextualize Sugar and Spice, like, to me, you seem to be implying, I think unintentionally, that, like, female-led teen comedies are, like, kind of all camp, in a sense. Which maybe there's an argument for that. I think sort of if that kind of commenting on the artifice of, like, teen social dynamics does feel kind of campy, right? Like, and maybe the nuance for you guys, like you said, is sort of a subjective line of like, this arbitrarily feels more grounded in reality or something. I don't know. So, I mean, like, I guess, yes, like Sugar and Spice is, it's like, it's hard to say. Like, I mean, I guess camp in terms of like the style that they choose, I think is sort of like the style of acting. Because I feel like you could still have the same plot to me. I don't think that plot per se is actually... I mean, especially the fact, like you point out, it's technically kind of inspired by some sort of true story, or that, like, there are real ridiculous things that happen. So plenty of stuff in real life. So it's just, I think what actually makes it is they're just sort of like adopting this particular, like, I mean, I don't know. They're not like, there's not a heavy aesthetic style that I feel like in that. I mean, there is a style to it, but to me, it's not like an over the top, like kitschy style to that movie in terms of like the set dressing or the whatever. But I do feel like the thing that makes it camp is like the way that they chose to like perform and like read the comedy. Like you're saying, there's sort of like this like heightened style of acting that isn't grounded in reality, rather than I don't think the plot's not grounded in reality. Like you could just have a different style of acting in that movie, and that movie would probably not read camp.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
I think that's the only thing that makes it, I guess, in this definition, camp to me is just like the choice on the style of like the line delivery and like like the way that they choose to like perform the comedy and perform the script basically is what makes it camp. It's not aesthetically particularly like campy or kitschy to me. Like the plot isn't, or you know, I don't even think it's particularly like absurdist. It's like a pretty straightforward plot, actually. I don't know. It's like about some friends who like want to help their friend because they love her and like rob a bank. Like the scenario is sort of a little goofy, but it's not like actually really that bonkers. So I don't actually, yeah. So I don't know. That's my sort of thought on that. Now, transitioning, do I think Vanilla Sky is camp? I don't actually think so. I think it's just like not a great movie. You know, like I think it's like a poor execution, which maybe like again, does that make it unintentional camp? I don't know, because according also to like what you were saying too, is like this sort of like joyful or like this other sort of element, and I'm like, I don't there's nothing joyful in Vanilla Sky. It's, you know, it's extremely like yeah, there's a lot going on in that movie that I would not necessarily, yeah.
What? You've got to open the can of worms, Dan, because you picked this bullshit.
Yeah, because like, okay, so let's start with our history, our personal history of the movie. Let's open up the floor. It's time for a confession. Yeah, when this movie came out, I thought it was genius. I thought it was a masterpiece.
But not a camp masterpiece.
No, it wasn't camp to me. Of course not.
Because yeah, you were 18 years old.
Yeah, I was 18 or something like that. And I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was weird. I mean, obviously, it had great music going on to it. The whole plot and stuff. Like, I went along with it because I was like, the ending, like the opening and the ending, and kind of maybe the thought process in it, I could see was good. And I've revisited it probably, I don't know, maybe 10 times since it's come out.
Jesus.
And every time I see it, like it started to fade maybe 5-6 years out. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it doesn't really hit the same. And then, you know, his recent history has sort of like really opened up the weaknesses of Vanilla Skies, that made them become so much more clear, like Elizabethtown. And we bought a zoo, and you know, specifically Aloha, which I've seen for some reason many times, and it just, for some reason, it's like I go back and watch Vanilla Sky, and all I can see is like Elizabethtown and Aloha, which are just miserable experiences to watch. Is there something about Vanilla Sky that's like interesting in terms of like execution or ideas? Probably somewhere in there. But it is one hell of a mess of a film. And I haven't seen the original. Have you guys seen the original?
No, I'm scared to.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Is the original pretty good?
This is my thing about that. I'm just gonna, since it's confession time, I'm gonna be honest that sometimes with like American remakes, which are, you know, a lot of times like fairly inferior to like a non-English film that they're remaking, you know, Christopher Nolan's Insomnia, and other stuff, like and I'm just gonna be honest, like it's hard for me to tell if like, because I do think it I don't think it's great, but I think like it feels like it's like executing something like, you know, a little bit better, or just like a little bit more dreamier, or like it, you know, I don't know. But it's sometimes hard for me to tell, because I'm like, am I just like, does it just give it an air of like mystery or something because it's in a different language? Do you know what I'm saying? Like for one's brain and sort of the viewing experience, it sort of automatic like makes it this kind of, you know, more like distant kind of whatever, ineffable thing. Like any movie, not just the open your eyes, the other version of Vanilla Sky. But like anyway, because sometimes I'm like, is it just true that all American remakes are inferior, or is it like when I watch the original, I'm kind of like, I do think that it's a lot of time, I mean, remakes in general, but I'm acknowledging the like unintentional, I think, like mental bias of like the human brain sometimes where you're watching something in another language and you're like, this just like feels like maybe it's better, like that. I think that might be a play. So I can't confidently say that it's, I mean, I think Penelope Cruz acts better when she's speaking Spanish.
Right.
No, I mean, like, which is a lot of people, like, she just isn't, especially in this time period. And I think in general, like, she just is like much more comfortable and like a stronger actress when she's speaking Spanish too. So I think that helps. And she's also in the original. But yeah, so I can't confidently say if like somehow the other one is like actually really good. I think it might be like slightly better execution, and the ending is much more dark than this one. So again, I feel like those things, it's like, is the human brain inclined to think it's deeper because there's a darker ending and it's in a different language? I don't know. I think it might just not be that great of a film either. But
so yeah. At the crux of this is, I think, 3 factors. I'm curious if you'd agree with the 3 that stand out as like the film's not only just like overall weaknesses, but like I think it borders very close to, but not quite enough fully on the ledge of camp, where like did I have fun revisiting this? Yes and no, and it's got to be it has to be like a full yes with my chest if I want to like consider it some kind of camp, even naive camp. And I talked about this a little bit with Madam Web. Like, it was a lot of fun, kind of, taking part in the anticipation of it on the internet. But ultimately, I don't think it really has enough at the end of it to become like a cult following film that we revisit. Like, I could see myself revisiting Sugar and Spice continually, but not Vanilla Sky.
That's a good point, because in the original essay, I'll read out the quote. She says, in naive or pure camp, the essential element is seriousness, which is present here. We all agree, right? Mm-hmm. A seriousness that fails. I would think we all agree with that too. Yeah. But here's the key. Of course, not all seriousness that fails can be redeemed as camp.
Exactly.
Only that which has the proper mixture of the exaggerated, the fantastic, the passionate, and the naive.
Yeah.
I don't know, though. I mean, it's so over the top.
Okay, but that's just that's one. I think you're right. I think there is this over the topness, especially with regards to my second point, the naughty existence and frame fillingness that is Tom Cruise. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's just so much, but not in the way that you want camp to be, right? He's not Tim Curry in Rocky Horror. He's not Samantha Robinson in The Love Witch. He wants to be. He wants to be this giant weirdo, and but he's like, I don't know. I just always get vibes. I've definitely loved him in movies. I will watch every Mission Impossible in large format opening weekend until the man dies. But when he's trying to do this kind of thing, it's a fucking like, Charles Foster Kane on like all sorts of drugs kind of character. I can't.
He's high on thetans or whatever they
are. I just can't do it. I cannot.
Well, it's funny that I picked next week. We're going to talk the 90s, and I picked Magnolia for Naive Camp. I don't know the connection here. Thanks to Molly, who convinced me to watch it, and I can't unsee that movie now. in my
well,
head.
I can't believe you've never seen it.
Well, but like it's a perfect example of like what we're talking. It has like this like reputation. Now, Magnolia has a different reputation than Vanilla Sky. I think Vanilla Sky for us, I'm thinking of like our friend group in high school. Like, oh, this movie's amazing. It's so interesting. Blah blah.
Like way to disperse that on other people. It's mostly you.
Oh yeah, no, that's not true. There's like one or two other people involved. But Magnolia has this, you know, really big sort of film bro like stature, which I don't think Vanilla Sky does, right? Or I'm misreading that.
You know, I was surprised in the research. There's a lot of Vanilla Sky defenders out there still. It's very much like seems to be in terms of like the people that care about the life and career of Cameron Crowe, as just seems to be more majority than minority that believe that like he went out on a high note here before he fizzled out.
What do we think are the big failures of this movie? Like obviously it's a swing for the fences by Cameron Crowe. Where do you think he fails? Molly, I want to point to you on this one. Where do you think he falls short?
I mean, God.
Where to begin?
Well, not the soundtrack, am I right?
I mean, I was going to say that.
I know. I'm sorry. I was just setting up for that.
It is so distracting, though.
Yeah, it does. Like, I would agree. I mean, again, yes, because I feel like this isn't. When you think about all the other Cameron Crowe movie examples that you did, right? Like from this an extended time period of like Almost Famous, and then like Elizabethtown, We Bought a Zoo. What else we got? What else we got for him?
Aloha.
Thank you.
What the hell is that?
I don't know. Whatever. So, but like, again, his sort of the tone, even like his kind of tone for all of those movies is very similar, right? Like what he's like, he actually has like this sort of, you know, like a lot of people and directors, like he has this very like Cameron Crowe-esque like thing that he's trying to do, you know, like banging sound, bunch of needle drops, a very sort of like brightly colored film, you know, that has these like moments of pathos mixed with like him sort of trying to do this like sort of dreamy comedy thing, you know, mixed in with like, you know, all of his movies have sort of like sad, you know, or like trying to touch on like sad backstories of somebody, a heartbreak or a death or this or that or whatever. And like, so that's why this movie is also like for him to use in the my critiquing, like the soundtrack hits, but it doesn't mesh with the movie because like he's trying to do the same type of like musical cues. And you could argue in the first part of the film, but it's I would argue it's so short-lived. It's like the first 20 minutes of the film where you're supposed to, like, if I'm trying to give him credit, be like, okay, he's trying to set the tone of like actually a more traditional Cameron Crowe movie and like this sort of rom-com-y feel, you know? Like until the tone shift of Cameron Diaz showing up outside her apartment to have him get in the car. You know, and then the rest of the movie is not that though, but like you're caught up in like the dream-esque thing or whatever in the beginning. And so I do think the tone is supposed to be different, but it doesn't, I don't know. I just don't think he does that transition well. Jason Lee, he's not like his presence is very like takes me out of it.
It's unsettling.
Degrading.
It's unsettling, right? Like, but again, it's, and I think this is what I often, a lot of my critiques come in context and like these. So I'm going to say like that things, which I think they just have to. So like, for example, like the presence of Jason Lee in this role is even more like, doesn't work for me. Or Tom Cruise for that example doesn't work for me. Even in the specific context of Cameron Crowe, because I'm like, he knew how to cast those people. Jason Lee is excellently cast and Almost Famous. Tom Cruise is excellently cast in Jerry Maguire. So it's like he knows how to use those people actually in other films. And like he knew how to cast them correctly. And then he just like completely miscast both of them in this movie. So it's like, you know, and it like takes you out where you're like, why are they here? This doesn't like, like in both of the roles, like sure, on paper, Tom Cruise seems like he's a good person for this sort of like shallow playboy that has to whatever. It's not like Tom Cruise can't act or do serious stuff. He just doesn't, he just doesn't work in this role, and I don't know if that's because like Cameron Crowe doesn't really. This is like too far outside his wheelhouse to tell like a story like this in a way that like maybe could work. So I just don't think it. He's trying to tell like I don't know, some sort of like, you know, moral musing on like the human condition and like confronting your own limitations as a human being or something or whatever. And I just don't think I don't think he knows how to handle, he didn't know how to execute that. So I just don't think he can't carry through the tone. So it just ends up, it's unsettling, but not in a way where you're like at the end where you're like, I was unsettled, and it like really made me think about some stuff, and it really made me like, do you know what I'm saying? Like movies, like I just watched, I mean, whatever. I can think of like movies that I've watched recently where it's like, you're like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, I'm settled, or like, this is like weirding me out. But like, there's some sort of like emotional purpose at the end where you're like, okay, I was happy to go on this journey. Here, I just don't think where you end up, I don't know, really like, it doesn't work. The whole like sci-fi sort of like lucid dreaming future reveal thing, and like, I don't know, him and Penelope Cruz don't have chemistry.
Oh my God.
And they make Cameron Diaz be like psycho in a way that's unnecessary.
Yep.
Like if anything, I'm gonna say what's camp is like, but her performance actually too unsettling for me to not look. It's like there's no enjoyment there.
He called it lightning in a bottle when they shot that scene.
Which
bottle.
one?
The one where she's like
in the car.
In the car.
What?
You called it lightning in the bottle. You thought it was.
I don't know. Every scene I just like felt bad for her watching. I was like, why are you doing
Emily
this
Blunt
to
and
her?
Oppenheimer. Like, what is this?
Why? You know, you're like, why are you doing? Because there's a way to like have somebody again where it's like, you know. So that's what I'm saying. If anything, it's camp because that doesn't actually feel grounded in reality. Where it's like, I feel like you could have made again that character type of like somebody who's sort of like the person who's left out and he's kind of treating like shit and is whatever, but like the way that, and I just don't like also, and the way that they sort of set it up too with like the Penelope Cruz's character is like, that scene is so, which maybe again is part of the point, but like that scene is so shitty where they're like at the party and like, and she's like standing there staring at them, and Penelope Cruz is like, I don't know, that girl's staring at you. She looks like the saddest girl in the world. Like, I don't know. She's still staring, and Tom Cruise is like smiling about it. And I was like, what is wrong with these people?
That's like a sociopath.
The vibes are
like
off
all
for
of
the
them
very
are like,
second. Yeah.
Penelope Cruz is supposed to be like manic pixie dream girl-esque, but then she's like, I'm like, she's kind of being a bitch here for no reason. Like, I don't even understand. Like, none of it sort of, again, even like the setup didn't really work for me either. I think there could potentially, again, there's like potentially some interesting themes or like things, but I don't see how I don't think he's able to handle telling a story that has those kind of, you know, it's so outside of his wheelhouse, and that I feel like that's why he never tried it again. He just tried to regurgitate the same kind of movies after that, you know, with Aloha and Elizabethtown and We Bought a Zoo and stuff like that. Like that's I mean, he didn't execute those very well, but like at least that did not feel like this to me.
Right. And that was going to be my third point, is that like if you are going to try something strange, you don't do it with like a puzzle box movie like this, which I don't know if there's anything going on. It almost feels like 2001 there was like two sides of the same coin with the kind of puzzle box movie like Donnie Darko, where it has a different kind of absurdism to it that you can largely forgive because it gets the tone right, versus a movie like this where it tries to like, even like there's nothing like I didn't there whatever, Cameron, there's Easter eggs every time you watch it, but like it's so painfully telegraphed that like you watch it a second time, or even after you watch it the first time, I remember being so upset that it was just like, oh, that's why they were showing us about this fucking dog on TV that had been frozen.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't a symbolic motif. That was like literally like
it's not a breadcrumb, it's like a loaf of bread.
Right, exactly. But also just like so far removed from what you think the story and themes are. Like that's the thing that blows my mind is like you 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 have you have all these things not working in this quote realistic world, heightened but still very much like Cameron Crowe, where he's like trying to show some kind of whimsical romance, and then like ripping that all away. I don't know, it almost felt like him like self-flagellating a little bit, where he's just like, no, it's actually all terrible. But it also was super strange to have that. I always forget. I've seen this movie like 4 times now, and I always forget that like the point in which he supposedly like signed up for the lucid dream, like, was when he like wakes up on the street after the reuniting with Penelope Cruz for the first time as a disfigured guy. And it's just like, wait, so the stuff with Cameron Diaz in the car, that was real? Like that seemed to be like, like the mind going to extremes, and like there's just like so much unrealistic. I don't know. It's just, I can't.
Well, the thing is, I couldn't even tell you the basic plot of this movie. I've seen it 10 times.
That's the thing. It's also the title is like, at least open your eyes.
Yeah.
Makes sense for what the movie's idea and themes are. And Vanilla Sky is just like, hey, Paul, write an Oscar song. Yeah, I got it.
Hey,
yeah.
Some good things about this movie. Well, a couple of things. One is that when I first saw this, and I don't know if culture has changed or I have changed, but
it's possible.
When I first saw this, I was like, oh, his face is really disfigured. That's really bad, and that sucks. Now I see it now, and I'm like, his face doesn't look that bad. Am I the only one who is thinking this? That his face, like,
no, I was definitely
so upset that his face is like kind of screwed up.
Yeah,
I was people. I don't know. Like, people wouldn't react that way. They'd be like, okay, you got a screwed up face. Who gives a shit? Like,
it's like Diet Elephant Man.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is. And like the whole sad sack shit about, oh, my life is so different. Like, I don't know. It just seems so overwrought. And Cameron Crowe did say it's one of his most personal films.
There is some quote that I remember reading from the original that the director of the original film says, in retrospect, he thinks this is his worst film, and he considers like he thinks that like the script feels like it was written by high schoolers that didn't know anything about life, which I feel like translates, because they follow it the plot, except for the ending, they actually follow really closely. So like, take that for what you will from the original person who came up with this plot, that he does not feel that it aged well and thinks it's crap.
Yeah,
I think, it's like a pretty sophomoric, like, it's trying to do like deep, or imagines itself like making some sort of deep commentary on whatever. Again, like it's trying to give that vibe, but it's like, what are you sort of saying? Like, I don't know, a super shallow person realizes that like life is hard when like the things that like gave you privilege are taken away. Like, I don't know, like, but like, is it really even trying to say that? Like, it doesn't really land on anything in particular. The other thing I was going to say before too is like, again, in context, what's crazy is also like, for me, why this just doesn't hold up, even just like outside of the movie itself, is also like, because Tom Cruise was in like Eyes Wide Shut, like 2 years before this, which is sort of like not the same movie, but like I feel like I would put in like a similar category. Like, Vanilla Sky does not execute that, but it's like the fact that Tom Cruise was in like an insanely superior movie where it's like sort of, this dreamlike world and this sort of a little bit outside of reality, but still you're not sure what's a dream, what's real, exploring human relationships and like whatever. Again, like the fact that he was like just in like his previous film, this was like a far superior sort of like widely considered like masterpiece movie, and then there's like this, like to me again in context and like necessary comparison, it's like that just makes Vanilla Sky like seem even more shitty, you know, like where you like, or you're forced to confront that this movie's not saying anything and is like kind of a poor, you know, poor execution on multiple fronts. God,
well, I think that kind of the writing was on the wall, because it was just a few years later that Kanye West put mentioned, like, name dropped Vanilla Sky in one of his songs. That like this was the definition of a movie for the kind of like faux artist, like egomaniacal.
Yeah.
Right? Like
100%. Like me as a 19-year-old.
Like,
yeah. It's also like, here's another thing about this that I would point out. If this script got put in the blacklist contest, it would win. Like, it's just it's one of those things where it's like, it's so over the top, it's so interesting, and like, oh, it's so like unorthodox, blah blah blah, but it can't even tell a basic story. Like, to Molly's point, like, what is the story? Rich guy gets into an accident, gets really sad, decides to kill himself and go into a dream world, and then decides, oh, actually, I didn't want to kill myself. I want to go back to the real world, which filled with pain. I guess that's a story. I don't know. Is it Dante's Inferno? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the common ground here between what makes something be so over the top while still failing to reach the heights of camp. Because like, you do a Google search of Vanilla Sky campy and not much comes up. There's the only thing that seemed quasi relevant was a reviewer talking about how in his opinion that you could get to levels of cringe or camp, and I think that's conflating something mildly interesting, but ultimately I think is a very cynical take on Sontag's original notes. I think that there's something to be said for that kind of experience. I think that, like, as I texted you the day after, it was like watching Vanilla Sky late at night for the first time in several years, just like fucked up my day. Like, I was just in a really weird headspace because of this movie.
Why is that though? Why were you in a weird headspace?
I think because it goes, I think Molly's word is right on. It's an unsettling experience. And not in a way that like a good horror movie or good tragedy is, that like is thought provoking or mood oriented and artful. It's just like, why it's like eating, I don't know, it feels like you're like the I don't know if this reference hits, but a couple of years ago, some students at my school that I teach at were into that like one chip challenge, where it's like the spiciest chip ever, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's an unforgettable experience, but it makes you miserable. Like,
well, I think there's something to be said to like this idea of cringe and crossover and camp and cringe, because I feel like cringe is really taken off as like an entire genre.
But it's
like, and this is like proto cringe. Like, maybe this is a cringe pioneer.
God, I can't believe I regret.
I think maybe we need to write an essay to rival Sontag's camp essay on cringe.
Notes on cringe by Phil.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like, to me, at the end of the day, like when I rewatch it, like I said, it feels, which is not a compliment in this case, like it feels like a Cameron Crowe movie, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You know? And so like, to me, it's sort of like, I don't know, is it any more? It was him I don't know, I'm trying something different, but like, is it any more cringe or like a failed execution than like Elizabethtown or
Yeah.
like,
I think I had a panic attack after we
Aloha or
watched
something.
Elizabethtown.
Yeah, it's
Because I
definitely
made
So
both of you
unsettling.
watch that too. One of you had not watched. I love being just a trauma touchstone for both of you. As a patron of this podcast, yeah, I think was it Chris? Were you the one that hadn't seen Elizabethtown
no, I
before?
No,
definitely.
I hadn't seen it
You
before.
hadn't seen it before,
Yeah,
okay?
and
When we watched
it
it,
spooked me. It spooked me.
yeah, it
It's a spooky
is.
film.
It is
Yeah.
rough. But that's what I'm saying, where it's sort of like, so again, I'm going to give Kevin Crowe credit where credit is due and say this does feel like, so it's like, I don't even know if I can, it's just the like, and the fact that it was I feel like, again, acknowledging like the fact that it was a remake. So it's like, he didn't make up this story.
Yeah.
In the sense of, I mean, he did kind of adjust the ending a little bit, but like, he, I don't know. Like, yeah, it feels for better or for worse. I'm kind of like it. I don't know if it it's a little weirder and unsettling, but I don't know if it really deserves to be outside the rest of his. It's any better or worse than the rest of his stuff from the aughts. Is it any
Yeah.
better or worse than Elizabethtown? Like at the end of the day, for a Cameron Crowe movie, I don't know because that one is rough. That one is like, again, where it's just like he just.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather spend time with Tom Cruise, as odd as time spent with him feels, especially when he plays a character like this. But it's still way better than hanging out with Orlando Bloom.
And that whole movie, that like
But it's like a
indeterminably
dream
long-lived
movie. That's the
film.
thing that unsettles me about that movie. It's like it's in a unreal landscape. I don't know. I can't get into it. I'm gonna have to talk to my
That's what I'm
therapist about
saying.
it.
So it like really Vanilla Sky just actually like that's what I'm saying. It's even though like the story is just this weird sort of anomaly outside of like the general type of story he tells on repeat. Um, like it really is at the end of the day, it's just like the same. I don't know. It's still a Cameron Crowe movie in a weird way. Yeah, again, and the thing I'll say too about just like which again, it's like which is so funny because it's like you think of it's just directors who you're like, wow, you hit lightning in a bottle
Yeah.
with like one thing like with Almost Famous, where it's like the casting in that movie is like really well done, and he just like is unable to cast the rest of his movies in any way that works. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like Orlando. None of the casting in like Elizabeth Vanilla Sky, the casting doesn't work. Because and
Not even
again,
Kurt
it's
Russell, who can do anything.
right. No, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like it's the casting where he doesn't know how to direct. It's like he only knew how to direct, which is again the fact that Almost Famous was supposed to be his most personal film, and he says Vanilla Sky, get out of here.
It's like
He's just
literally his
talking
muse.
out of his butt. It's just like people talking out of their butt at that point.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like I think that's like I said before, where it's like it's just more things contextually are more jarring for me. Like the case of like seeing him use Tom Cruise and Jason Lee well in other things, and then seeing him like so and like Vanilla Sky and everything subsequent just like not be able to like cast or direct people great because like again Tom Cruise actually, I mean, he doesn't exercise those muscles anymore, but like in the 80s and 90s he was doing a wide variety of things and like he does it well, and he's actually can be unsettling in a way that's like useful for a film. I mean, Interview with the Vampire, great example. Extremely unsettling in that. And has like his sort of weird, unsettling manic energy is actually well used in Magnolia. But like here, it's like it just feels alien and misplaced for like it's not grounded in like this character has no grounding. I don't even. So
And it also, the movie does a despicable thing of so many like movies that have a similar kind of unreal twist. Well, okay, and I was going to bring this up too. Take Serenity for instance. I think
How
that.
dare you? I forgot about that till this moment.
But like that's one that I do want to revisit. That one seems
I'm
like
never
it would be
So do I.
it would be fun to go back there.
Would it?
I think more fun than
until the
Sky.
ending, because it's fun until the ending. Then you're like, well,
But
what?
Is it fun though?
But the thing that Vanilla Sky does with this like fake reality twist that I think is despicable is like if you're a defender of it, you can just say like, yeah, it wasn't grounded in reality because it was just supposed to make you think like what's real and what's not.
Yeah, dude,
And
it's about illusion.
yeah, like
Reality.
all life is illusion. Like
well, it doesn't have to be grounded in like. Again,
I agree. No, I agree with you.
Yeah, like I'm just like I see grounded reality of like you got to feel, or again, if you're going to our camp moment, like if people are gonna like take a different sort of stylized approach to acting, like the Sugar and Spice is a great example, where it's like that, like to my point before, where it's like I actually don't think the plot is very, despite the sort of bank robbery grounded in reality, there's deliberate and intentional acting and stylistic choices where people are sort of acting, out of normal, like a heightened version of like human, whatever, for a
When the
specific
parents
effect.
meet each other, I love that scene.
Yeah, and it works, right? But like here, sure, we could make an argument for like, and I'm sure there's some examples, I can't think of them off the top of my head, where like you or like maybe something revealed, like when you get a reveal where you're like, oh, I thought something was like kind of off about how these people were acting and I was confused by it, and then you're like, oh, now it makes sense why the vibe of how they were acting or portraying these, here it's not intentional enough. It's not deliberate enough. It just feels like there's everybody's doing, it's like five people, like the first part is like Cameron Diaz, Penelope Cruz, and Tom Cruise and Jason Lee are all like acting in different movies.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
And it's just like such a gross setup too for we're supposed to be like interested or caring about this budding romance when it's predicated on like like moving in on his friend's date. Like that's supposed to be part of the energy of this character.
Charming. It's Tom
but
Cruise
also like it's supposed to be like this doomed tragic romance when they don't like rekindle their love and it's all fake. And also like it's the manic pixie dream girl thing of like we know nothing about Penelope Cruz's character outside the fact that she is bilingual and
she exists for his dreams.
Right, but like she did exist before the lucid dream, just like Cameron Diaz did. But like he was literally like living in a Garden State Fatal Attraction Citizen Kane mashup universe, and that was supposed to cohere somehow.
I just want to note for you Vanilla Sky lovers, it came out on 4K last year.
Who are you talking to, Dan?
I just want to say 13. I just want to this is to illustrate where Cameron Crowe is in his career. 13 deleted scenes where he adds commentary to each one.
No, poor man. Cameron's not okay.
No,
he's not working really. So
he's not.
This one's got to be a weird
Nancy
one
left him, and
right because Nancy did the music.
Nancy left him like 14 years ago.
No, I know, and I'm just saying he's been struggling ever since. It didn't help his situation. My favorite part of the movie
is her soundtrack. It's unbelievable.
Elevator
the guitar
beat.
work. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you guys say about some trivia
Let's do it
as a palate cleanser, so to speak? But first, I have a trivia question about the two films that we just discussed.
Ooh.
Can either of you name the actor that both Sugar and Spice and Vanilla Sky have in common?
That's a good question. I don't know that I know. Any hints?
I would say Tall.
Did you say tall?
Tall.
Is Jason Lee in both?
Nope.
No.
It's not Tom Cruise because he's short.
Short as heck.
No, I don't know.
No guesses.
The lead from Urban Legend, the red hair.
No, Alicia Witt. No.
Yeah.
Good guess. No, it's Conan O'Brien.
Okay, that's a cheat.
It's true though.
No, that's great.
That's a cheat because he's not. He's only in
That's what you want every time.
He's only in like archive footage played on TVs.
We'll allow it.
Because Iona Williams, the writer of Sugar and Spice, is friends with Conan because they both wrote on The Simpsons together, and one of those what seemed to be archive footage scenes was actually something that he taped specially for the film. That would be a setup for one of the jokes about the character's obsession with him. And also there's did you guys watch the full credits where like then there's
but that's just him photoshopped in like a picture with her. That's not actually him.
Well, it's called shenanigans.
That's true. Okay. Nevertheless, I thought it was a fun connection, coincidence, fate, if you will. Real trivia: movies from the 2000s, besides these two films, that many people call camp. I'm going to recite a quote from the film, and first person to name the film gets the point. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Hello, I'm Eugene Levy, and yes, I'm an actor. No, I said cappuccino. I'm here to talk to you about something very important. And no, it's not about me or my career. I'm here to talk about subliminal messages in rock and roll music.
Oh, Josie and the Pussycats.
Yeah, Molly's gonna crush you.
I'm gonna get crushed.
I mean, it's one of my favorite movies.
I almost picked it for this episode. I maybe should have, but I'm glad that maybe if we get one more person to give Sugar and Spice a shot, that'll be good. Okay, next one. Completely other side of the universe. Here we go. I've seen me a lot of weird shit in my day, but I ain't never seen a one-legged stripper.
Oh, that definitely rings a bell.
Mm-hmm. We thought in the
Thunder.
Nope. Decent guess, Molly. We saw this in the theater together.
Enemy of the State? No, sure. Enemy at the Gate?
Enemy at the Gate's almost Is that camp? No.
It's cringe.
Give me like
2007.
Next quote.
Yeah. I'll come back to say. Planet Terror.
There you go. Okay, because my next clue
is my brain need to index has one legged stripper.
Is
that the Quentin Tarantino double feature thing?
Yeah, it's
Robert
Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez.
Also featuring not Judy Hicks, that's her in Scream, but
Marley Shelton.
Marley Shelton as the evil doctor in Planet Terror. Okay, next 2-0. By the way, Dan, pick it up.
I know. I'm terrible at this.
Maybe you can get this one, Dan. Look, I'm a man of substance. Dorky chicks like you turn me on too. Dead silence. Okay.
That one I don't know.
Hey, you guys, look, I know I'm just the dude that carries the bags, but it seems to me we all play an important part in this group. I mean, we're just like a big, delicious banana split. Wow.
Just carries the bags.
Directed by James Gunn, 2002.
Ooh.
Jeepers Creepers?
I don't just tell us out of our misery.
No, we gotta keep going.
Whatever the answer is, it's gonna be not.
It's a live action reboot of a animated series.
Oh yeah, Scooby Doo.
Yeah, Scooby Doo.
He did
terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
Oh my gosh. All right. All right. Let's keep going. Live action animation. This is going to be just a courtesy point for either of you. It doesn't matter if racing never changes. What matters is if we let racing
Racer.
change us.
Yeah, I mean,
Speed
right?
Racer.
Yeah.
Okay.
The live action animation.
I got a point. I got a point.
Oh my god!
You got a half point.
I didn't get 0. That's what counts, man.
I literally had the word racing in the quote.
Yeah, I know. It's like spoon feeding you one. Give me a break.
Okay, whatever. I love you, Dan.
I paid him off on that one.
It's true.
Fine.
Okay, let's end on oh man, this is a good one. The day I died was the day I started to live. In my old life, I longed for someone to see what was special in me. You did, and for that you'll always be in my heart. But what I really needed was for me to see it, and now I do. You're a good man, Tom, but you live in a world that has no place for someone like me. You see, sometimes I'm good. Oh, I'm very good. But sometimes I'm bad, but only as bad as I want to be. Freedom is power. To live a life untamed and unafraid is the gift that I
Oh, Catwoman.
I can't believe you got that.
Wow,
There's
good.
like this. Oh my god!
It's such like word salad. Like
I feel like there was some phrase in there. I was like, I don't know, that unlocked like something,
like a sleeper agent. Oh my god!
Yeah.
unlock something deep inside me.
That's amazing. Good work,
Nightmares.
Molly.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Nightmares.
Oh.
Absolute nightmares. Well, I feel good that I didn't really get Scooby-Doo, so that at least makes me feel better because I don't need that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know about. I mean, maybe have I even seen either of those? I feel like I've seen parts of.
He did Scooby too.
Yeah, I know, isn't that nuts?
Why is that nuts?
It just doesn't seem at all like with his. Was he like a trauma? Did he do trauma movies?
Yeah,
first?
yeah. So he was like, I mean, I think that's kind of the reason why he did it was that he was able to like. Oh no, sorry. He was screenplay only. He directed the.
Oh, he wrote it. Okay.
Wrote it.
He wrote that, then Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that's not.
And then Scooby-Doo 2 after that.
Right,
Jesus.
right.
Jesus. Wow, I didn't know he's currently the CEO of DC Studios.
Yeah, DC.
That's
Yeah.
the CEO. Wow, wow, wow.
Yep.
That's
He was
crazy.
married to Jenna
He's doing
Fisher.
Superman.
Oh, interesting.
He was what?
Married to Jenna Fisher. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, that is an
What a
episode
journey.
for the books.
Yeah. What do we got coming up? The 90s. Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, and then Magnolia.
Yeah. And it'll be fun to have a guest that has kind of expertise in representations of drag in cinema, and that will be coming up next. And then equally exciting, digging into the 80s after that. With the original Hairspray with a John Waters expert on as a guest.
Nice. Love it. Molly, thank you for being here. Have
Thank
we
you,
changed your
Molly.
mind about Vanilla Sky?
What have we? Get.
I don't need. I think you're the one that went on the true journey.
Yeah,
These last 20 years. You're the one. This was the journey for you.
It's been 23 years.
Vanilla Y.
Okay. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. This has been Film Trace.